What if believing that the medicine you are taking is helping, even though it isn't, was enough to heal your body? Well, that is exactly what the placebo effect does, and I'll be explaining what it is in this speech. The three things to remember are what the placebo effect is and what triggers it, how the brain and body create the placebo effect, and when and why the placebo effect works. If you've never heard of it, knowing how the brain can influence your body may change the way that you think of medication, recovery, and even just your overall well being. I have learned about the placebo effect in biology classes, but just to make sure I had all my facts straight, I read a few articles by the Journal of Neuroscience, the Department of Health and Human Services, and parts of a book by Fabrizio Benedetti. So by the end of the speech, you should know exactly how the placebo effect works and how our brain can influence our body. So first things first, how the placebo effect actually works and what triggers it. So placebo effect is when someone sees real improvements on their symptoms after receiving a treatment with absolutely zero medical ingredients. This could be like a sugar pill or maybe a saline injection, as long as it looks like a real medication, but actually isn't. And the trigger for the placebo effect is the patient's expectation for that treatment to actually work. This is driven by their trust in the person they're receiving the medication from and the actual medication itself. This is because actually believing that the treatment is going to work tricks our mind into reacting as if it was receiving a real medical treatment when really it isn't. And scientist studies have actually shown changes in pain and stress levels as well as brain activity after receiving an inactive treatment, proving the placebo effect is real and actually works as long as a patient is believing the medication will work. So, second point is how the brain and body create the placebo effect. So, after someone has taken their placebo and is expecting it to work, this allows the brain to release chemicals through our nervous system known as endorphins and dopamine. So, endorphins are our body's natural pain relievers, which would be the same as if you took like a pill for a pain reliever. And then dopamine is associated with things like rewards or our overall well being and maybe motivation. These chemicals actively reduce our pain and stress levels as they flow through our nervous system, as well as improve our mood. Now, this is like, I can simplify this by saying it's like the brain is telling our body that, hey, you're receiving real medicine, and when in fact it's not, it's really receiving the chemicals from the brain. And this just goes to show how intertwined our brain really is with our body, and that our thoughts don't just stay bottled up there. They can actually cause physical responses throughout our entire body. But with all this being said, it's not like a placebo can fix maybe a broken bone or a disease, because that's just not how it works. But what the placebo effect can do is help with the symptoms you receive from those things, like the discomfort or pain you're feeling from a broken bone or disease. And that brings us into our third point, when and why the placebo effect works. The placebo effect works best with conditions actually regulated by the brain, which include but are not limited to things like pain, anxiety, fatigue, depression, and even a headache. This is because the chemicals, like I said before, flow through our nervous system and actively reduce our pain and stress levels as well as improve our mood. One of the most important and common uses of the placebo effect is in medical research. So, in clinical trials to test whether a medication is effective, there is two groups, one that receives a placebo and one that receives the actual medication. So before that medication can be released onto the market, they test it against the placebo in this clinical trial just to see if the medication is more effective, then this group's sole expectation of their treatment that's going to work when in reality it's not. So now you know what the placebo effect is and how it works. You can better understand how our mind and body are connected. And I'm sure you can remember my three main points throughout the speech being what the placebo effect is and what triggers it, how the brain and body create the placebo effect, and when and why the placebo effect works. So the next time you're taking medicine, remember it's not just what's in the bottle that matters, but also what's in your mind.